course. Hey, so good morning, everybody. Let's restart a little technical snafu. I'm Joergen Geerds. Most of you know me, so we're going to skip the lengthy introduction of what I've done in the past. There's the Google and the internet for you if you want. Let's talk a little about the future of video arrays. Last year we saw basically the great boom of taking still panoramas to the next level and introducing the time factor to it. Still panoramas are still great business, but if something moves for the audience, it becomes a little bit more interesting, despite the technical difficulties we have to deal with it. So there are arrays of many technical solutions how to shoot multiple images at once. We have the solution from the Fraunhofer Institute, which is, in my opinion, the least portable solution. We have the Google Street View solution that we all know. Basically, they strap it to a car and it maps our streets that we know. We have the immersion media dodecahedron and the ladybug that we know. I actually need the lights a little bit later. Yeah, so, but unless Carlos wants to switch on and off the lights.
I told you that I want.
Yeah. Okay.
When you want, I will.
Yeah. Okay. So all of
number one light switcher.
Yeah. So all of those solutions are excellent engineering feats. They do extremely good what they're doing, but all suffer from one thing: they have a limited field of view and are mostly to be used in a vertical position, because they all deal with some form of nadir blind spot where they can't record and need some structural support to run it and or to have more computational things in there. Some cameras try to get away with having any support at all underneath. This is the throw-up ball that we saw earlier this year, which takes a picture once you throw it in the air and once it's all the way on the top. Some inertial measurement sees, oh, I'm not moving anymore, it snaps a picture, falls down, you catch it, and you have your panoramic there. Interestingly enough, there's also a patent pending for it, so I'm going to look forward to see basically what they're going to patent in there, but it's interesting. The sensors in here are basically just little cell phone sensors that they patch together. And last year, I was approached by Sony Ericsson and to come up with a project, what can we do with a bunch of cell phones? And I said, well, we can try to make a panoramic rig with it. And I tried to come up with a solution, basically how to put multiple cell phones together with fisheye lenses that would mimic and allow the relatively good video that comes from the cell phones together. So this was how I made an initial prototype for proof of concept to test basically just if the geometries would be working. Then I used this little foam board rig and put it on a bicycle and rode around the block. Me not being an engineer but a photographer, immediately discovered that the little magnetic holder that holds the fisheye lenses to the case is definitely not made to be ridden on a bicycle. So one of them made hard contact with concrete and cracked, of course. Yeah, so, well, and knowing that some will die, I actually bought a whole bunch of that. So I still have a whole box of those fisheye lenses at home. If anybody wants some, let me know. Unfortunately, the optics are not the most greatest optics in here, so it was limited. Then I proceeded to come up, okay, how do we get some form of a stable rig together? So I went into the idea, okay, we can do rapid prototyping. 3D printing is a very new thing. So I bought actually a 3D printer and had no idea how 3D printing works or how to model something for a 3D printer that actually is printable at this point. 3D printing works that it deposits a small layer of plastic, like a big layer cake, and it layers those on top of it, and the software also put some form of support structure on it to support higher layers, because otherwise they would be printed in mid-air, which doesn't work, of course. And since I didn't really know how much support material would be printed, I literally run out of orange plastic in mid-print, and it was 2 a.m. in the morning. I was totally in panic and had no idea if I even can continue the print just refeeding white plastic into the printer. It fortunately worked, and the printer kind of stopped like 3 millimeters before the print was finished, so it was still usable. Me being stupid and adding too much support material to the print setting, then spent basically about 5 hours digging the actual piece that I needed out of this mountain of plastic. This whole process was over the course of 2 weeks. In the 2 weeks, I slept about 8 hours in total. Because I had to learn so many new things. The printer was driving me crazy, and prints take also forever. This piece printed in about 36 hours. And me not knowing how the printer works, had to basically pay attention for 36 hours to this machine. And I started finishing, taking the rig out of the context in about 4 hours before the plane to Utah left. So this was all fine. Then we flew out to Utah with a whole film crew, and where we teamed up with an outdoor mountain biker that would actually take the rig and take the video through Moab in Utah, which is this great place. And we mounted the rig to his mountain bike, and he had to deal with, okay, this is a little bit heavy, and it's not the smallest rig, and this is actually the actual piece. So this weighs about 2 kilos with a little bit of support underneath. We end up with 3 kilos. So we were really lucky that Mark Sevenov, who was actually riding the mountain bike, is one of the fittest people in the world. And then we asked him basically, okay, the film team basically, okay, go take a big loop. It takes about 20 minutes for him to take one loop in the practice run. And because they had to film him for the documentary, and we had to take the 360 video how he's riding around this thing. And you can see actually the result on the Xperia Studio website. So this is how this whole thing started, that I was interested in 360 video, and I just like making things. And this was pretty interesting. Out of the Xperia Studio project consists of many other projects, and they kind of complained that unfortunately mine was the most complex one, because they had to explain so many new things to the audience in this thing, because they did not know what 360s are, they did not know what 360 panoramas are. They had no idea what rapid prototyping and 3D printing is. And the other teams, other projects have basically, yes, they have one background story of how it's done. And on this one, we actually had to make 3 documentaries to explain the different sections of it, because there was also the communication with the Android phones and how we programmed a Wi-Fi remote control that would start the cameras in time. That was also a little bit short-sighted. All my features that I wanted to have in the software kind of fell short a little bit, and so they weren't synced, so I had to actually use Ryan's famous flash in the bucket method to sync the videos, which was totally strange, because we had this film crew, we had the bicycle, we had people, and me running around with flash in a white bucket in a national park. People were asking, what do you do with a bucket there? Well, we work here in a sort of desert environment. So, and we couldn't really tell much because it was still under NDA, so the people were kind of like curious, well, what are you guys doing here? So, but you can see this. The projects and the cell phones proved to be a little bit, they're too big, too bulky, and not controllable enough as I wanted to be in this whole process. The project kind of petered out, and we didn't do a follow-up panorama. And
hello, my friends.
This is Ignacio.
And you are enjoying the meeting in New York. I am a bit sad because I can't be with you but if you are watching me on the screen, it's because my friend Joergen is showing the 360 rig. I was the first customer and user and beta tester of this rig, and I only can say that I'm really happy with it because it's so small and so light, and the design is so good that you can record the full spherical videos and in every position, so it allows me to record some stream activities video, and I'm planning to do others really interesting that you will see soon. But I think Joergen will explain better than me, and he speaks English also better than me.
So I worked with Ignacio since last October when we came up, okay, how can we build a rig that doesn't have all the problems we had with the Sony Ericsson rig? Meaning, how can we get rid of the Nadia patch? So I played around with the GoPro 960, which was the first model that GoPro came out, and I come up actually with a geometry that would allow the full spherical coverage. And this is here how we all know how PT-GUI shows the how the different frames get together. And based on that, I basically started to redesign basically, okay, this is the geometry I need to do, and came up with a 3D design that would place the cameras in the geometry that we just saw. And the GoPro 960 has a relatively wide field, so I came up with something that actually allows full spherical coverage with 5 cameras only. So I was very excited. Put a rig together, how this looks, and this is the rig that we just saw. And Ignacio went out to take this actually to the ski slope. And there we are. Sorry. And some of them saw this video actually earlier. So this is taking 5 GoPros and allows recording at full 30 frames per second. And the interesting part about this is how the Nadia patch actually vanishes completely. Since we're not holding the camera in a vertical position anymore, and the overlap of the cameras literally makes the mounting point sort of disappear. So for the first time in this whole process, parallax is actually your friend. So the first experiment basically was very successful. And then we started to move, okay, where do we move the project next? And the GoPro Hero 2 came out, which has this awesome super wide angle 1080p resolution. But unfortunately, because it's a consumer camera, or like all other video cameras, they decided, well, 1080p is an awesome aspect ratio, 16:9. Let's waste 25% of the sensor and just ignore it. And so if you use this and try to come up with a panorama, a 6 setup like this would not work because you don't have a full coverage and you don't know what to do with the holes that you need to fill. So we went actually back into the old standard 960 resolution, the 1280 by 960 pixel video, which covers more or less the full sensor and allows the actually full coverage. The difference here is why we can't use a 5 setup anymore is because GoPro decided to change the lens. And it's not a 16.5 millimeter lens anymore, it's an 18-something millimeter lens. And that kind of screwed me up a little bit because the 5 setup didn't work, so I had to actually redesign this whole thing again. because we like to redesign things. It's rapid prototyping for you. And so I printed basically a new rig that uses this, and it looks like this. So this is version 3. This was then shipped to Matthias Taugwald in Switzerland, and he discovered basically, oh, well, this has actually now heat issues, because the Hero 2, because I didn't have much time to test it, runs much hotter than the first one, because it does more processing in it, it has a better chip in it, and it's hot. So after a while, so he kind of wrote me back, dude, this thing gets hot, it shuts off itself. What do? I measure temperature on the SD slot, it's 70 degrees. I said, oh, it is not good, because the plastic I was using by then is PLA, and it's a nice biodegradable plastic. It's super hard, super strong, unbreakable for all purposes, because as you saw earlier how I was digging out the first rig, the Sony Ericsson rig, how long it took. But the main issue is that PLA gets soft at 59 degrees. And the camera reaching 70 degrees, and the screw holes are literally near the heat sink, which means the screw holes would get soft and the cameras would get loose inside. So no good, no good. So switching over to new plastic, I switched over to ABS, which introduced a couple of other issues, but I tried to basically redesign this rig again. So came up with the geometry in here that is more flatter, so we got rid of this cradle shape design, so it's more flat base, so it's easier to put together, and it prints easier. So this one you could theoretically leave in your car for a little bit, because this gets soft at 110 degrees. So it's a little bit safer. I decided to also go with white plastic due to heat issues, because the GoPros are still incredibly hot inside, and we still need to get, basically if you use it outdoors, and I don't want to get additional heat energy from the sun in there, because if you have a black one, it would just heat up additionally, and I try to get rid of it as much heat as possible. Putting a vent inside or a fan is not an option, because we have microphones inside, and it would totally ruin this whole sound experience of it. So we go with passive cooling, and I'm going to talk a little bit later about the heat issue separately. So the video quality actually of this rig is a little bit better than the previous one. And Ignacio took it actually on a trail and was running actually in here. There's still early rough stitches where we haven't worked out the templates completely, but it gives you roughly an idea how flexible you can now be, and try this with a ladybug. It's not as much fun. You can talk with Ryan about this, how much fun it is to run around with those things, but it's not.
Can you turn around, please?
Oh, yep, sorry.
Can you take a question right now?
Okay.
Is anything in that backpack related to your camera?
No.
Food and water.
Food and water, and whatever he needs to be in probably national park in Spain. Of course, I mean, I'm not going to go through the different projection that Carapano is. We all know how a spherical looks like. Another video that he posted is where he edited a little bit different mixtures. He's really famous for filming in places where it's unexpected. I mean, this is what all the good photographers are about. And to put the user basically in a place where they can experience this thing. And I think adding the motion to this whole thing adds more how it feels, because all of a sudden you have the background noises, you see the birds flying by. And so let's see what they do. And obviously it's relatively easy to make the pose where the camera is standing on disappear, because that's the nature of the parallax in this context. You don't need to do much editing at all for this. Okay. Let's move forward.
How big is that file that you're watching?
We are scaling down the video to 2000 by 1000 pixel. The camera rig produces an equi-rec that's 4000 by 2000. So, of course, Ignacio likes to put his cameras on a stick and onto a rope and dangle it from somewhere, just to put it in places where it's unexpected. And it's like the IVRPA panoramas. You want to put the camera in place where it's new, where you can experience something, where it's interesting. So, this one. And I have one more. So this is actually we're trying to play back, actually this is the source size. So this is the full 4000 by 2000, and now you see basically how much problems the computer has to actually play back a gigantic file like this. And of course I can barely drag the mouse because it's pretty unresponsive. But it is actually recorded at 30 frames per second, and if you scale it down, it actually plays. So we're not going to watch this whole thing. Can we have a little bit more light? So this is actually what we just saw in action. This is all it is. The camera up here weighs about 480 grams, which should make all the helicopter people very happy, because you don't need much payload anymore. You don't need to carry a 3 kilo D3X anymore. And it should also allow getting the Ayrton style images in there, because here we are. Because you can go extremely far up without actually tiring out too much. So you can do actually the sound guy position, where they hold microphones like this all day, and this is not much heavier than a big microphone basically. So you can go actually into places where it's not impossible, and you don't need to worry so much about seeing the boom lady, because later in the video you're going to just see a guy holding up his hands. And you need to deal with this, how you want to play with this in the video, because all of a sudden you cannot hide in the Nadir patch anymore. You are part of the video unless you hide somewhere. So it's going to open a new method of how we're going to shoot videos and be a little bit more personal. The thing what I did in Grand Central was basically literally filmed like this, me just walking like this, because the camera basically sees me completely, so I shouldn't have any stitching errors. So it is a little bit practice what you need to hold the camera in a way that you are, if you want to be in the video and if you want to talk with the audience, be in there, that you hold it in a way that you avoid being in the overlap areas. The parallax issues due to the size, because the camera is so compact, is actually shrinking it down, so parallax becomes only an issue of stuff that's roughly about 60 to 80 centimeters to the camera. Everything past that has parallax errors that are negligible, so we don't need to worry so much about it. The rig doesn't have any form of battery inside. So this is literally just a pure recording device. It has almost no computation inside. That was a design decision I made because I knew that the GoPros are hot and there is no room for another computer in there that does the stitching. So I decided, let's just go for recording. We can do stitching offline on our computers later and deal with all the fun stuff. later. So this would be another setup that I use, and here you can see how the power cable, and should have taped this earlier, sorry. Gaffer tape is, yes, that's good gaffer tape. I think I bought it here in B&H, it's good gaffer tape. So power simply just plugs in, and you can use the cable basically just to wrap around the pole. It's going to vanish. It's not going to be visible in the video. And it's powered through any sort of LiPo battery pack. It accepts anything from 8 to 24 volts, which also should make the helicopter people happy. If you don't want to use a LiPo pack, you can use regular AAAs or AA's if they're large enough. And operational-wise, we have literally just replicating the 2 buttons of the GoPros. And it also comes with a remote control, so you don't need to use the buttons that are on the camera. You can just keep it in your pocket. You don't need to worry about it, or give it to an assistant, or just let it run. And that is pretty much one of the futures of the video rigs that I'm going to see, and we're going to do the rest of the session just as Q&A, because I think you're going to have some questions.
How many are you making?
He was first and then you.
Is that recording to 4 different cards?
It's recording to 6 different cards.
6 different cards.
So you need to buy many SD cards.
Many SD cards.
There is a future update that GoPro is planning. Right now, the cameras record at a bit rate of 15 megabits per second, 1.5 megabytes. A 16 gig card lasts you for like 3 hours or so.
How long did it take you to process the video of Grand Central?
Long. The processing part let's cover a little bit later, because we're going to do it later. How many I'm going to make? This is the first prototype of the V4 version, and I'm going to make probably 3 more the next couple of days. And then we need to figure out basically how many, or who wants one, and then how many do we make. It's handmade. It's labor of art. Yeah, I know. It takes about 2 days to make one at the moment. I'm hopefully at the long run I'm going to shorten this period, but that's what it is right now.
Do the GoPros, the user supplies the GoPro cameras?
That's one option. I usually buy the GoPros and put them in. But if you happen to have a whole box of GoPros at home and don't know what to do with it, and want to use it for this project, then yes, we can work something out.
Has Hollywood come knocking yet?
So far, only one Indian movie production company came my way and was asking why am I not using Blackmagic cameras? And why do I use cheap GoPros? And then I actually went through a little calculation and saying, basically, if you use Blackmagic cameras, you have out-of-pocket costs of about $80,000. I'm selling this with batteries and rig for $4,500. And the Blackmagic camera would give you a resolution of the AccuRect of 4,200 pixels, and I do 4,000. So yeah, 5% for 800% of the cost. So it's like, yeah, okay. You're next.
Is the synchronization of your cameras, does that involve the Wi-Fi backpack interface of these cameras? Or
The GoPros are not synced through the internal bus. The internal bus that GoPro is using is a rather complicated critter that I tried to explore, but it was beyond my capabilities. This is only electrical syncing. So far, every video that I recorded is perfectly start-stop. I haven't seen a lost frame between them. I've seen sync issues if it takes stills. The still mode of the cameras is basically takes you back to 2002 when you saw the badly compressed JPEGs that were coming out of point and shoots. That's the quality you can expect from those cameras. It's not great. It seems like they put all the summer interns onto the image processing, and all the good coders at GoPro were working on the video codecs.
Is that using the new GoPros that have the wireless capability? Is that how you're triggering it, or you're
No, I'm triggering through a manual thing. The idea about this is I cannot use the bus because I don't have access to the bus communication. It requires more electrical design that I can do. I'm a photographer. I'm not an electrical engineer. I'm not a structural engineer. So I'm trying to come up with something that's reasonable what I can do. What I do is actually I want to keep this actually not a closed product. It is more an open platform if somebody wants to go in and hack it, if somebody wants to go in and add things to the project, comes up with a solution like how can we record the data from an IMU to record basically the orientation of the rig in space and then use this later to electronically level it in post, then that's sort of the plans that I'm going to do. If enough funding comes down the road towards fall, I'm probably going to try to come up with a sheet metal design that actually uses all the outside as a big heat sink to get rid of the heat. Right now we can expect about 25 minutes indoors in recording time before the cameras get too hot and shut off automatically. So the style basically is record your video, do whatever you want for 10 minutes, shut it off as soon as possible. And just let it cool down.
Take the second camera and shoot.
Buy a second camera if you want. Put it in a cooler if you need to. It is literally play by ear. The cameras don't get damaged. They have an internal sensor that prevents overheating. So at 70 degrees, they just turn off. And how fast they cool down is up to you, and it depends on the environment. I would assume that if you're outdoor, have plenty of airflow, that you can record much longer. I just don't have data about this right now.
Joergen, what sort of durability does it have in high winds? In other words, outside an aircraft, can you do 100 knots? Can you do?
I'd say so, yes. Okay. Yeah. I haven't tested it yet.
Yeah, just curious.
But I would say yes, you can stick it out of a helicopter. Yes, it will not fall apart. It's pretty sturdy. I try to keep the internal structure really compact and hard enough. And also what I didn't mention, obviously it comes in a nice Pelican box. And this has room for 2 batteries and a charger and a remote, so you can literally just grab your monopole, grab your box, and go out to shoot.
So one more environmental question. Is saltwater resistance of your entire camera comparable with that of the GoPros?
Water resistance?
Saltwater.
Saltwater?
Use GoPros on surfboards.
Yes. No, this thing is basically full of air holes.
I just had a flash when he said
there is
winds, I thought America's Cup, not the government.
No, this is, I have no possible way to weatherproof this at the moment. I literally put as many air holes and vent holes in this thing as I can possibly imagine without compromising the structure, just to get as much air into this thing.
So you've opened the waterproof casing of the GoPros?
Yeah, they're all at home. I have a big pile of them now. If anybody wants waterproof cases for GoPros, by all means. And batteries. I have spare batteries if you want to.
Is there any reason why the lens shield of the GoPro case is not on the attached to the or it's just like
It was just another feature that I felt it wasn't really necessary. That because we're not taking it out into any rainy environment anyway, there's no purpose to have a lens protector on it. And I'm actually making little lens caps for the rig, so you can actually put it safely in your bag. And it's an awesome, great item to lose.
And buy more.
And buy more. I mean, I'm going to just put a whole bag of those things in. Yeah.
When you did the ski video, you had audio line, so you have 6 cameras?
Yep. So 6 cameras in this ski video. Yeah, you pick whatever you want.
Now what happens, like now that you have air holes in there, are you getting any wind coming through?
Not more than before. Because the GoPros, how they're set up, they have a little microphone hole. And we can do a little bit foam insulation between the microphone hole and the microphone itself. But there's a little fabric in there that prevents some wind noise.
Do any of the cameras record better, like the ones that are on the back side, not facing into the wind?
Nope, they're all the same.
They're all about the same.
Yeah. And the GoPros also record all in full auto mode. And so we can talk a little bit about stitching. Full auto mode means you need to do post-processing on it. Right now, the post-processing is really painful. It involves exporting each video stream into individual JPEGs, batch stitch them, convert the individual panoramas back to a video stream, and then do your post-editing, whatever you want. So this involves, if more video you shoot, you run up to 100,000 files in your local folder easily. So Color is working on a solution actually to ease that up, where you take in the video streams and get them stitched based on the template. Immersive Media is working on a solution. I heard Yellowbird is working on a solution that solves that big issue of workflow. And the Grand Central video that we just saw is actually a stitcher from Aldo Hoban, who's also working on something. And Tom Sharpless is also coming up with some. So we have like whole range of awesome sort of things that gonna allow us to stitch those videos actually in a sane manner in much faster turnaround. Right now I have a 120:1 ratio in terms of how fast processing is, which means 1 minute of footage takes you 2 hours to process, including the insanity of having 100,000 files on your computer. The next solutions that are more integrated, we talk about like 10:1 ratio or 5:1 ratio.
I think 5:1 is perfectly.
Yeah, so 5 minutes processing for 1 minute footage all of a sudden brings us in the world. Yes, we can experiment much more. It's not such a pain to go back and process this whole thing and just to see if it's something usable or not. It's easier to go back and be more playful. So hopefully this summer we were going to see the first ones coming out for testing. And yep, that's it. I hope I did to keep.
One more question.
Last one.
Last one, short one. What about the arrangement of the lenses and the sweet spot that you use for the mainly circular 360-degree view? You know what I mean?
There is no sweet spot.
Usually one would take 6 shots around.
Yes.
To capture a cylinder and put something on top and at the bottom, securing that you have almost the sweet spots of the lenses in your cylindric video.
Yep.
But yours are in a cubic way arranged. And
well, it is literally 4 around, 1 up, 1 down.
Okay.
That's the arrangement, more or less. The only thing is that we don't think anymore in the vertical thing. We can think now in any direction we want. It doesn't matter where you hold it. You level it in post. The template stays the same. All you do is at the end you adjust the YPR basically of your output. Cool. Thank you. Thank you.